I am 28 years old, and on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my sister brought my high school ex-boyfriend as her plus one. It wasn't just any ex. It was Ethan, the one who had made my life a misery for 2 solid years, the one whose name I had not spoken in a decade. When I saw him standing there next to her, smiling as if he belonged, the blood drained from my face. My sister, Chloe, just squeezed my arm, her nails digging in slightly. She leaned in, her perfume cloying and sweet, and whispered in my ear, "I just thought it would be good for him to see how far you've come." My wedding day was meant to be perfect. Liam, my fiancé, was everything I had ever wanted. He was kind, steady, and he saw me for who I was, not who I had been. We had spent a year planning every detail, from the flowers to the music, creating a day that was supposed to be a celebration of our love, a fresh start. And in one single malicious act, my sister had tried to tether me to a past I had worked so hard to escape. I looked from her smug face to Ethan's awkward grin, and I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This was not a thoughtless mistake. This was a declaration of war. I tried to keep my composure. I had 100 guests waiting, a man I loved standing at the altar. I could not let her ruin this. I took a deep breath and forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. "That was an interesting choice, Chloe," I said, my voice dangerously calm. She just shrugged, her expression a perfect mask of innocence. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We reconnected recently. He was so happy for you. I thought it would be a nice surprise." A surprise. That was one word for it. A grenade was another. I looked past her to where my mother was fussing with the ribbons on a flower arrangement. I needed an ally, someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling this way. I walked over to her, my wedding dress rustling around my feet. "Mom, did you know Chloe was bringing Ethan?" I asked, keeping my voice low. My mother glanced over at him, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, before she turned back to me with a placating smile. "Now, honey, don't let it bother you. It's your big day." Chloe probably didn't think it through. You know how she is. I did know how she was. She was calculating. She had always been. Every success I had was met with a backhanded compliment from her. Every failure was a source of her quiet, smug satisfaction. My mother's refusal to see it, to acknowledge the deliberate cruelty, felt like a second betrayal. "She did it on purpose, Mom," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Be the bigger person, sweetie," she said, patting my hand. "For me, for the family. Don't let this ruin everything." Being the bigger person. That had been my role in the family for as long as I could remember. I was the one who had to forgive, to forget, to smooth things over. Chloe could light a fire, and I was expected to calmly put it out, apologizing for the smoke. But as I stood there, in my white dress, moments away from marrying the love of my life, I felt something shift inside me. I was tired of being the bigger person. I was tired of being the peacemaker. I looked at Liam, who was watching me with concern from across the hall, and I knew I had to get through this day for him. For us. But I also knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was the last time Chloe would get away with it. The war she had started was one she was going to lose. The ceremony itself was a blur. I repeated my vows, my voice steady, my eyes locked on Liam. He was my anchor in the storm my sister had created. His hand was warm and firm in mine, and for those few minutes I could almost forget that Ethan was sitting in the third row, a ghost from a past I had buried long ago. I could feel his eyes on me, and I could feel Chloe's even more intensely. She was watching for my reaction, feeding on my discomfort. I refused to give her the satisfaction. I smiled at my new husband, a genuine, radiant smile, and I pushed all thoughts of my sister and her cruel games out of my mind. This moment was mine. This moment was ours. But the truce I had declared in my own mind was short-lived. The reception was where Chloe's plan truly began to unfold. It started with her maid of honor speech. She stood up, champagne flute in hand, and began with a series of what the guests probably thought were charming, funny anecdotes about our childhood. But I heard the subtext. Every story was designed to paint me as awkward, insecure, and foolish. She talked about my terrible high school fashion sense, my disastrous first attempts at makeup, and my cringeworthy teenage poetry. The guests laughed, and I forced myself to laugh along with them, but I could feel my cheeks burning with humiliation. She was always such a dreamer, Chloe said, her voice dripping with false affection. Always falling for the wrong kind of guy. She had a very dramatic phase in high school. Some of you might remember it. She paused and looked directly at Ethan. But look at her now, all grown up. She finally found a nice, stable man to settle down with. We're all so proud of how far you've come. The implication was clear. Liam was the safe choice, the boring choice. I was the wild, unstable girl who had been tamed. I squeezed Liam's hand under the table, and he squeezed back, his jaw tight with anger. He knew exactly what she was doing. Before I could process the sting of her words, she delivered the final blow. You know, she said, her smile widening, there's someone else here who has known my sister for a very long time. Someone who saw her through that phase. Ethan, why don't you come up and say a few words? A wave of murmurs went through the room. My heart stopped. This was not part of the plan. No one was supposed to speak except the designated people. My father started to stand up, a confused look on his face, but Chloe just waved him down with a breezy gesture. Ethan was already making his way to the front, a microphone in his hand. He looked nervous, but there was a glint of something malicious in his eyes that I remembered all too well. He was enjoying this. He cleared his throat and tapped the microphone. Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ethan, and, well, the bride and I go way back. He chuckled, and a few people in the crowd chuckled with him. We had some wild times, didn't we, Sarah? He used my first name, so casually, as if we were still the best of friends. I have to say, I was surprised when I heard you were getting married, but I'm glad to see you finally found someone who can tame you. He winked in my direction. The word hung in the air, ugly and possessive. My entire body went rigid. It was the exact same sentiment Chloe had expressed, but coming from him, it was 1,000 times worse. It was a public branding, an attempt to claim some part of my past, and by extension, my present. But he wasn't finished. He raised his glass. So, a toast. To the happy couple. I wish you all the best. And Sarah, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. If you ever get bored, you know my number. Some things never change. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Every eye in the room was on me. I could feel their pity, their curiosity, their shock. It was a humiliation so profound, so public, that I felt like I couldn't breathe. Liam was on his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face was a mask of fury. That's enough, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out. Ethan looked taken aback, his smug expression faltering. Chloe rushed to his side, placing a hand on his arm. Liam, he was just joking. It's just a bit of fun. Don't be so sensitive. A joke? I finally found my voice. It came out as a whisper, but it cut through the silence. I stood up, my legs trembling. I walked over to my sister, my vision narrowing until she was the only person I could see. You did this, I said. This was you. You planned this whole thing to ruin my wedding. Don't be ridiculous, she said, trying to laugh it off, but her eyes were wide with panic. She hadn't expected this direct confrontation. I told you you're being too sensitive. It's a party. People are supposed to have fun. Fun? I repeated the word, disbelief warring with a cold, rising rage. You think this is fun? Humiliating me in front of everyone I know? In front of my husband? On my wedding day? My mother and father were there now, trying to intervene. "Girls, please," my father said, his voice strained. "Not here. Not now." "Yes, here. Yes, now," I said, turning to face them. "You told me to be the bigger person. You told me to let it go. Is this what I'm supposed to let go of? She brought him here to hurt me, and you all just stood by and let it happen." My mother looked horrified, not at what Chloe had done, but at the scene I was causing. "Sarah, you're making a scene," she hissed. "Think of the guests." "I am thinking of the guests," I replied, my voice growing stronger. "I'm thinking of how they just watched my own sister try to destroy my happiness. And I'm thinking that I am done. I am done being the bigger person. I am done being quiet. And I am done with you, Chloe." I looked my sister dead in the eye. "Get out of my wedding, and take him with you." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth hanging open. She had never seen me like this. I had never been like this. But the person I was before that day was gone, burned away by the public humiliation and the profound betrayal. Chloe finally seemed to realize I was serious. She grabbed Ethan's arm and, without another word, pulled him towards the exit, her face a mixture of fury and shock. The guests watched them go, their whispers filling the void they left behind. I stood there shaking in the middle of my ruined reception, with my new husband's arm around me. The party was over, but my fight was just beginning. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of apologies and awkward conversations. Liam was a rock, deflecting concerned relatives and getting rid of anyone who wanted to gossip. He handled everything, allowing me the space to simply exist in my shock. We cut the cake with forced smiles, had our first dance to a song I could no longer hear, and left as early as we possibly could. The drive to our hotel was silent. I stared out the window at the city lights, feeling a profound and desolate emptiness. The joy of the day had been so completely overshadowed by the ugliness. When we got to our honeymoon suite, the first thing I did was take off my wedding dress. It felt like a costume from a play that had gone horribly wrong. I sat on the edge of the bed in my slip, and the tears I had been holding back finally came. Liam sat next to me, not saying a word, just holding me while I cried. He let me cry for the ruined party, for the public humiliation, for the sister I once loved and the family that had failed to protect me. After a long time, my sobs subsided into shuddering breaths. "I'm so sorry, Liam," I whispered. "This was supposed to be our perfect day." He pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. "It was never about the party, Sarah. It was about you and me. And that part was perfect. The moment I saw you walk down the aisle, that was all that mattered. The rest is just noise." He paused, his tone shifting. "But that doesn't mean what she did was okay. It wasn't noise. It was poison. And we're not going to just let it go." His words were a comfort, but they also stoked the embers of my anger. "My mother told me to be the bigger person," I said, my voice thick with resentment. "She always does. Chloe gets a free pass for everything, and I'm just supposed to absorb the damage." "Not anymore," Liam said firmly. "We're a team now. Her behavior affects me too. It affects our life together. And we get to decide what we accept. We are not accepting this." We spent the first few days of our honeymoon talking. We barely left the hotel room. We ordered room service and we pieced together the events of the wedding, analyzing every word, every look. We talked about the history of Chloe's jealousy, the little cuts and digs over the years that I had dismissed or ignored. Seen all at once, they formed a disturbing pattern. It was clear that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was an escalation. The question was, why now? Why this level of cruelty? She said she wanted him to see how far I've come. I mused, staring at the ceiling. It's such a strange thing to say. It's condescending, but it's also something else. It's like she needed to prove something. To him, or to me, or maybe just to herself. "Maybe she's not doing as well as she pretends," Liam suggested. "People who are happy and secure don't need to tear others down. Maybe her life isn't as perfect as it looks on the outside." That thought stuck with me. Chloe had always been obsessed with appearances. She had the perfect job at a prestigious marketing firm, the stylish apartment, the designer clothes. She projected an image of effortless success. But what if it was all a lie? What if the reason she was so desperate to highlight my past failures was because she was terrified of her own present ones? When we got back home, the anger had cooled into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just going to cut Chloe out of my life. That felt too easy. It would let her off the hook. She would just spin a story to the rest of the family about how I was overreacting, how I was unstable. No, I needed to understand what had driven her to do something so monstrous. I needed to uncover the truth. And then, I was going to use that truth to make sure she could never hurt me, or anyone else. Again. My investigation started with Ethan. I had no desire to ever speak to him again, but I needed to know how this had been arranged. I unblocked him on social media, my fingers hesitating over the screen. His profile was public, a curated collection of nights out, gym selfies, and arrogant captions. I scrolled back through his photos, my stomach churning. And then I found it. A picture from 3 weeks before the wedding. It was a group shot at a bar. And standing right next to him, with her arms slung around his shoulders, was Chloe. They were both smiling broadly at the camera. The caption read, "Catching up with old friends, some things never change." He had used the exact same phrase in his toast. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a script. They had planned it together. This wasn't a last-minute, thoughtless invitation. This was a premeditated attack. I took a screenshot of the photo, my heart pounding with a grim sense of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. This was real. Next, I called my cousin, Sarah. She had been a bridesmaid, and she had a front-row seat to the whole disaster. She was the one person in my family I knew I could trust. I asked her to meet me for coffee, telling her I needed to talk. She arrived looking worried. "Are you okay?" she asked as soon as she sat down. "I've been so worried about you. What Chloe did was, I don't even have words for it." "I'm not okay," I admitted. "But I'm not going to let her get away with it. I need your help, Sarah. I need to know if you've noticed anything strange about her lately. Anything at all." Sarah thought for a moment, stirring her latte. "Well, she's been a bit off for a few months now," she said slowly. "She seems really stressed, and she's been talking about you a lot." "What has she been saying?" I asked, leaning forward. "Just little things," Sarah replied, looking uncomfortable. "Hinting that things with you and Liam weren't as great as they seemed, questioning if you were really ready for marriage. I told her she was being ridiculous, but she just brushed it off. And then there was the money thing." My ears perked up. "What money thing?" "I overheard her on the phone a few weeks ago," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "She was at my place, and she thought I was in the other room. She was arguing with someone, something about a loan. She sounded really desperate. She kept saying she needed more time, that she had it under control, but her voice was shaking. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now, alone, desperation. It was all starting to connect. Chloe's perfect life might have a few cracks in it." "Do you know who she was talking to?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. "No idea. But it sounded serious. She mentioned something about keeping up appearances. She said she couldn't let Mom and Dad know." That was the final piece I needed for my initial theory. Chloe was in financial trouble. She was hiding it from our parents, and her attack on me was a diversion, a way to create so much drama that no one would look too closely at her. It was a classic misdirection. After meeting with Sarah, I knew my next step had to be our parents. I couldn't ask them directly about Chloe's finances. They would immediately get defensive and warn her. I had to be more subtle. I decided to use the family emergency fund as a pretext. It was a joint savings account our parents had set up years ago, something they contributed to for unexpected major expenses. Chloe and I were both technically on the account, though we were never supposed to touch it without their permission. I called my dad a few days later, keeping my tone light and casual. Hey, Dad. I was just doing some financial planning with Liam, and it got me thinking. Do you remember the details of that old emergency fund you set up? I was thinking of setting up something similar for us. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Oh, that old thing, he said, his voice a little too breezy. It's just a standard savings account. Nothing special. I was just curious about the balance. I pressed gently. I remember you saying you wanted to keep it at a certain level. Is it still in good shape? Another pause. This one longer. Everything's fine, Sarah, he said, his tone becoming clipped. You don't need to worry about it. It's all taken care of. His evasiveness was all the confirmation I needed. He knew something was wrong. He was either covering for Chloe or was in denial, but either way, he was hiding something. The conversation ended quickly after that. He was clearly uncomfortable. I hung up the phone, a cold certainty settling in my gut. The money was gone, or at least some of it was. And my father knew. He was enabling her, just as my mother did, but in a different way. He was cleaning up her financial messes while my mother cleaned up her emotional ones, and I was left to deal with the fallout of both. The conversation with my father left a sour taste in my mouth. It was one thing for my mother to ask me to be the bigger person in social situations, but for my father to be actively complicit in covering up Chloe's financial irresponsibility felt like a deeper betrayal. It meant they were a unit, protecting her, and I was on the outside. Liam saw the look on my face when I got off the phone. He's covering for her, isn't he? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, feeling a fresh wave of anger and hurt. He was so dismissive. He didn't want to talk about it at all. He knows. He has to know she's been taking money from that account. So what's our next move? Liam asked. We can't just accuse her without proof. Your parents will close ranks and she'll play the victim. He was right. I needed more than just a suspicion and an evasive phone call. I needed hard evidence. But how was I going to get it? I couldn't exactly demand to see their bank statements. I felt stuck. Frustrated. I had all these pieces, but I couldn't put them together in a way that would be undeniable. My thoughts kept returning to Ethan. He was the wild card. He had been a willing participant in Chloe's plan, but he had no real loyalty to her. He was arrogant and self-serving. If I could appeal to his ego, maybe I could get him to tell me more about their arrangement. It was a risky idea. The thought of seeing him, of speaking to him, made my skin crawl. But he was the only direct link I had to Chloe's motivations. I spent a whole day agonizing over it. I wrote and deleted a dozen different messages. Finally, I settled on something short and direct. Ethan, we need to talk about the wedding. Meet me for coffee, my treat. I didn't give him a chance to say no. I just sent him the time and place. To my surprise, he replied within minutes. Sure, why not? The next day, I sat in a small, anonymous coffee shop, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw him walk in, looking just as smug as he had at the wedding. He sauntered over to my table and slid into the chair opposite me. So, he said, leaning back with a smirk. Married life not all it's cracked up to be? Come back for a taste of the wild side? I took a slow sip of my coffee, meeting his gaze over the rim of the cup. I refused to let him get under my skin. Let's cut the act, Ethan, I said, my voice even. I'm not here for a reunion. I'm here for information. Why did you come to my wedding with my sister? His smirk faltered slightly. He hadn't expected me to be so direct. Chloe invited me, he said with a shrug. We're friends. Is that a crime? We both know it was more than that, I countered. That toast you gave was word for word what you and she discussed. I saw the picture of you two from weeks before. This was planned. I want to know why. He leaned forward, a flicker of interest in his eyes. What's in it for me? He asked. The satisfaction of telling me the truth, I said flatly. Or the alternative, which is me telling a few of your new friends what kind of person you really are. The kind who helps a bitter woman try to ruin her sister's wedding for a cheap thrill. His eyes narrowed. I had hit a nerve. His public image was important to him. It wasn't just for a thrill, he said, his voice defensive. She paid me. I tried not to show my surprise. She paid you? How much? $500, he admitted, looking slightly ashamed. It's not a lot, but she said it would be worth it. She sold it as this hilarious prank we were going to pull on you, a way to loosen you up on your big day. $500. Chloe was so desperate to humiliate me that she had paid my high school ex-boyfriend to do it. The sheer pettiness of it was staggering. And what else did she tell you? I pressed. She told me a lot of things, Ethan said, seeming to enjoy the drama now. She said you were settling for your new husband, that he was boring and that you secretly missed the excitement we used to have. She said you still talked about me all the time. He puffed out his chest a little. She said you were unhappy and that seeing me would be a wake-up call for you. It was all lies, of course. A carefully constructed narrative designed to manipulate his ego and convince him to go along with her plan. She had painted me as a pathetic, pining ex so that he would feel powerful and justified in his cruelty. And did she say anything else? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Anything about her own life? About her job? About money? Ethan frowned, thinking back. She complained a lot, actually, he said. About her boss being an idiot, about how she wasn't appreciated at work. She mentioned she was tight on cash, that she was trying to keep up appearances for her family. That's why she could only offer me $500. She said it was all she could spare. Keeping up appearances, the same phrase Sarah had overheard. It was the key. Chloe wasn't just stressed, she was living a lie. Her perfect career, her successful life, it was a house of cards. And she was terrified that a single gust of wind would bring it all crashing down. Her attack on me wasn't just about jealousy. It was a desperate, panicked attempt to create a smokescreen, to make me the center of a tornado of drama so that no one would notice the wreckage of her own life. I left the coffee shop with a renewed sense of purpose. I had confirmation from the source. Chloe was desperate. She was lying, and she was in financial trouble. Now I needed to find out the extent of the lie. Her job was the next logical step. I didn't know anyone at her company directly, but I had a friend, Jessica, who worked in the same marketing industry. We weren't close, but we were friendly enough. I decided it was worth a shot. I called her that evening, trying to sound as casual as possible. Hey, Jessica. Random question for you. You know my sister Chloe, right? She works at that big firm downtown. I was thinking of sending a gift basket to her office to congratulate her on a recent project, but I can't remember her exact title. Do you happen to know anyone who works there? It was a flimsy pretext, but it was the best I could come up with. Jessica didn't seem to notice. Oh, yeah, I know the firm, she said. They're huge. Actually, my old colleague Mark just started there a few months ago. Let me check with him. What was the project? I panicked for a second, then quickly invented something. Oh, it was the big campaign for that new energy drink. She was so excited about it. Got it, Jessica said. I'll shoot him a text and let you know. I thanked her and hung up, my nerves frayed. It was a long shot. Mark might not know Chloe, or he might not be willing to share information. I spent the next hour pacing around my living room, checking my phone every 30 seconds. Liam watched me with a patient smile. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, he said. I can't help it, I said. This feels like it could be the piece that makes everything else make sense. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. My hands trembled as I opened it. It read, Hey, just heard back from Mark. Weird thing. He says the company had a huge round of layoffs about 2 months ago. The whole team that worked on that energy drink campaign was let go. He said he's pretty sure your sister was one of them. Are you sure she still works there? I read the message 3 times, the words blurring in front of my eyes. 2 months. She had been unemployed for 2 months. She had been pretending to go to work every single day. The expensive dinners, the new clothes, the $500 she paid Ethan. It was all funded by money she didn't have. Money she was likely stealing from our parents. I sank onto the sofa, the phone slipping from my hand. It was worse than I had imagined. The depth of her deceit was breathtaking. She hadn't just tried to ruin my wedding. She had constructed an elaborate fantasy to hide her own failure. She was so terrified of being seen as anything less than perfect that she was willing to lie to everyone she loved, to steal from her own family, and to inflict unimaginable cruelty on me, all to protect her fragile ego. A cold, hard anger settled deep in my bones. This wasn't just about jealousy anymore. This was about a fundamental sickness in her character. The need to bring me down wasn't just a petty whim. It was a survival tactic. If I was happy and successful while she was failing, the contrast would be too stark. She couldn't lift herself up, so she had tried to drag me down into the mud with her. I looked at Liam, my expression grim. "I know what she's been hiding," I said. "And now, I'm going to find the proof that will bring it all to light." The knowledge that Chloe had been lying about her job for 2 months changed everything. It recontextualized every interaction we'd had in that time. Her stress, her irritability, her obsession with my wedding. It was all the desperate flailing of someone who was drowning and trying to pull someone else under with them. But I needed more than a text message from a friend of a friend. I needed something concrete, something undeniable that I could present to my parents. Something that would force them to finally see Chloe for who she truly was, without any excuses or platitudes about being the bigger person. My opportunity came a week later. My parents called to let me know they were going away for a long weekend to celebrate their anniversary. As they always did, they asked if I could stop by the house a few times to water the plants and bring in the mail. It was a perfectly normal request, but this time, it felt like a key being placed in my hand. I would have the house to myself. I would have access to my father's office, where he kept all the important family documents. I told them I would be happy to help, my voice betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. Liam knew what I was planning. "Are you sure about this?" He asked me the night before my parents left. Snooping through their private papers, it feels like a line to cross. "She crossed the line when she paid my ex-boyfriend to humiliate me at our wedding," I replied, my voice hard. "She crossed it again when she started stealing from our parents to fund her lies." "I'm not crossing a line, Liam. I'm just trying to find the truth they're all working so hard to hide." He didn't argue. He knew I was right. The day after they left, I drove to my childhood home. It felt strange to be there alone, the house silent and still. I watered the ferns in the living room, my hands moving on autopilot. Then I took a deep breath and walked into my father's office. It was exactly as I remembered it. Shelves overflowing with books, a faint smell of old paper and leather. The large wooden filing cabinet stood in the corner. I knew that's where he kept everything related to finances. My hands were shaking as I pulled open the drawer labeled banking. I found the file for the family emergency fund almost immediately. Inside was a stack of recent bank statements. I sat down at my father's desk and spread them out, my heart pounding in my ears. I started with the statement from 3 months ago. The balance was healthy, exactly where it should have been. Then I looked at the next one, from 2 months ago, right after Chloe had lost her job. The withdrawals started immediately. $1,000 here, $1,500 there. They were all cash withdrawals from an ATM near Chloe's apartment. Week after week, the money was draining out of the account. I did a quick calculation in my head. In just 8 weeks, she had taken over $10,000. $10,000 of our parents' money, spent on maintaining a lie. I felt sick to my stomach. It was one thing to suspect it, but to see the numbers there in black and white was horrifying. I took out my phone and began taking pictures of every single statement, documenting the dates and the amounts. This was the proof I needed. This was undeniable. But as I was putting the statements back in the folder, another piece of paper slipped out and fell to the floor. It wasn't a bank statement. It was thicker, with a formal letterhead from a major car dealership. I picked it up, my brow furrowed in confusion. It was a loan application for a brand new luxury car, a $50,000 car. My eyes scanned the details and then they landed on the applicant's name. My name, Sarah Jensen, my address, my date of birth, my social security number, and at the bottom, a signature that was a clumsy but recognizable forgery of my own. I couldn't breathe. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. This was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. She hadn't just been stealing from our parents. She had tried to steal from me. She had committed identity theft. She had tried to saddle me with a massive debt, a black mark on my credit, all so she could drive around in a fancy car and pretend her life wasn't falling apart. I looked closer at the document and saw the big red denied stamp across the front. The application hadn't been approved, but that didn't matter. The intent was there. The crime had been attempted. This was the key artifact. This was the weapon. This went far beyond family drama and petty jealousy. This was a felony. The toast at the wedding, the lies, the stolen money. It was all part of a much darker, more twisted pattern of behavior. The wedding stunt now made perfect, chilling sense. It was a preemptive strike. She had wanted to paint me as unstable, emotional, and prone to drama. She was setting the stage so that if I ever discovered what she had done, no one would believe me. They would just see it as me being sensitive again, as me trying to cause trouble. She wasn't just trying to humiliate me. She was trying to discredit me. I took a dozen pictures of the loan application from every possible angle, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. I carefully placed every document back in the folder, exactly as I had found it. I left the office, my mind reeling. The full, ugly truth was now laid bare. My sister was not just a jealous sibling. She was a desperate, dangerous person who was willing to destroy my life to save her own skin. I drove home in a daze. The images of the bank statements and the forged application burned into my mind. When I walked through the door, Liam took one look at my face and knew. "You found something," he said. I couldn't speak. I just handed him my phone. He scrolled through the pictures, his expression shifting from concern to shock, and then to pure, cold fury. He looked up at me, his eyes dark. "She tried to steal your identity," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "She tried to ruin you." I finally found my voice. The wedding. It was all a cover. A way to make me look like the crazy one, so when I found this, nobody would listen. "Well, we're going to make them listen," Liam said, his voice hard as steel. "We're not going to let her get away with this, not for one more second." We sat down at the kitchen table and we made a plan. A private confrontation was out of the question. Chloe would lie. My parents would make excuses. They would try to sweep it under the rug, to handle it within the family. I couldn't let that happen. The truth needed to come out in a way that was public and undeniable, at least within the confines of our family. There could be no room for spin, no chance for her to play the victim. My parents' anniversary. They were planning a small celebration dinner at their favorite restaurant the day after they got back. My aunts, uncles, and a few close family friends would be there. It was the perfect stage. It was a celebration of family, of love, of togetherness. It was the ideal setting to expose the rot that had been festering at the core of our family for years. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The hurt and the shock were still there, but they were now overlaid with a layer of icy resolve. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the one who was about to hold the villain accountable. Chloe had wanted to show everyone how far I'd come. She had no idea how right she was. I had come far enough to see her for who she was, and I had come far enough to stop her. The night of my parents' anniversary dinner, I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. I chose my outfit carefully. A simple, elegant black dress. I wanted to look composed, serious. This wasn't about drama. This was about justice. Liam stood beside me, a silent, solid presence. He squeezed my hand as we walked into the private room at the restaurant. "I'm right here with you," he murmured, every step of the way. The rest of the family was already there. My aunts and uncles greeted us with warm hugs. My parents were beaming, happy to be surrounded by their loved ones. And then I saw Chloe. She was holding court in the corner, laughing at something my uncle said, looking radiant in a bright red dress. She looked like the perfect, successful daughter without a care in the world. The sight of her, so calm and confident in her deception, solidified my resolve. She saw me and her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. She came over to us, air kissing my cheek. "Sarah, you look nice," she said, her eyes sweeping over me with a critical gaze. "So simple." "I was going for classy, not desperate for attention," I replied, my voice sweet as sugar. A flicker of anger crossed her face before she masked it with a brittle smile. "Well, you certainly achieved simple." She turned her attention to Liam. "Liam, you look handsome as always. How's married life treating you?" "It's wonderful," Liam said, his tone polite but icy. "Now that we're past all the wedding drama." Chloe's smile faltered. She quickly excused herself and moved to the other side of the room. The battle lines had been drawn. We sat through the appetizers and the main course, the conversation flowing around us. I barely tasted my food. I was just waiting for the right moment. It came after dessert, when my father stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "I just want to thank you all for coming to celebrate with us," he began, his voice thick with emotion. 40 years with this beautiful woman has been the greatest gift of my life." He smiled at my mother, who blushed. "And we are so blessed to have such a wonderful family. We're so proud of our 2 girls. They've grown into such strong, incredible women. To family. To family," everyone echoed, raising their glasses. This was it. This was my opening. As everyone was taking a sip of their champagne, I stood up. A few heads turned in my direction. My mother gave me a small, questioning look. "I'd like to say something too," I said, my voice clear and steady. The room quieted down, all eyes on me. I looked directly at my father. "Dad, you said you were proud of your 2 girls. I've been thinking a lot about family lately. About pride and honesty and what it really means to support each other." I let my gaze drift over to my sister. She was watching me with a wary expression, her smile gone. "Chloe," I said, my voice still calm, "you always seem to have everything so perfectly put together. You're so generous, too. The gifts, the dinners. I was just wondering where you've been getting the money for it all, especially since you lost your job 2 months ago." A collective gasp went through the room. My father's face went slack with shock. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Chloe turned a ghostly shade of white. What are you talking about?" she stammered, trying to laugh it off. "That's ridiculous. My job is fine. I just got a promotion, actually." "A promotion?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's strange." "Because I heard your entire department was laid off 8 weeks ago. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" "She's lying," Chloe shrieked, her composure shattering. "Dad, she's making things up. She's been acting crazy ever since the wedding." "Am I?" I asked softly. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small stack of papers. They were the printouts of the photos I had taken. I walked over to the table and laid them down in front of my father. "Then maybe you can explain these. These are the bank statements from the Family Emergency Fund. Funny how over $10,000 has been withdrawn in cash over the past 8 weeks. The dates seem to line up perfectly with when you stopped having a job." My father picked up the papers, his hands trembling. My mother stared at them, her face pale with horror. The rest of the family was silent, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. There must be an explanation," my mother whispered, looking at Chloe with pleading eyes. "Oh, there is an explanation," I said, my voice turning to ice. She's been lying to you for months. She's been stealing your money to pretend she still has a perfect life. But it gets worse. It gets so much worse. I turned my full attention back to my sister, who looked like a cornered animal. Remember the wedding, Chloe? Remember when you brought Ethan just to see how far I've come? That wasn't just a cruel joke. That was a strategy. You wanted to make me look unstable. You wanted to discredit me, so that when I inevitably found out about all your lies, nobody would believe me. So you could just say I was being dramatic again. I paused, letting the words sink in. Then I pulled out the final piece of paper, the printout of the fraudulent loan application. I placed it on the table right on top of the bank statements. You did it so no one would believe me when I found this, I said, my voice ringing with condemnation. This is a loan application for a $50,000 car, in my name, with my forged signature. You didn't just steal from mom and dad. You tried to commit identity theft. You tried to ruin my financial future, all for a shiny new car. The silence in the room was absolute. It was broken only by a choked sob from my mother. My father stared at the paper, his face ashen. He looked up from the forged signature to Chloe's terrified face, and in that moment, I saw the denial finally crumble. I saw him finally, truly see his daughter for the person she was. Chloe? He said, his voice a hoarse whisper. Is this true? Chloe burst into tears, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. I was going to pay it all back, she cried, her voice hysterical. I just needed some time. It's not my fault, it's hers. She pointed a shaking finger at me. She has everything. The perfect husband, the perfect house, the perfect life. It's not fair. You always loved her more. I just stood there, my heart cold as a stone. I felt no pity for her. Her tears were not for the people she had hurt. They were for herself. You made your choices, Chloe, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I am now in the present moment watching her fall apart. This is real. This is happening. You chose to lie. You chose to steal. And you chose to try and destroy my life to cover it up. Liam stands up and comes to my side, putting a protective arm around my waist. What she did wasn't just a choice, he says, his voice low and firm, addressing my parents but making sure everyone in the room can hear. It was a crime. We have more than enough evidence to press charges. The threat hangs in the air, heavy and suffocating. My father looks from the papers to my face to his sobbing, broken daughter. The party is over. The celebration is ruined. But for the first time in my life, the truth is finally out in the open, raw and undeniable, for everyone to see. The aftermath of the dinner was as chaotic as I had expected. My aunt rushed to my mother's side, who was sobbing uncontrollably. My uncle was trying to calm my father down, who looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The family friends made their excuses and left as quickly as they could, their faces a mixture of shock and pity. Through it all, Chloe just sat there, her wails having subsided into hiccuping sobs, her mascara running down her face. She looked small and pathetic, stripped of all her usual confidence and glamour. Liam and I didn't stay long. I had said what I needed to say. I had laid the truth bare. Now it was up to them to deal with it. As we were leaving, my father caught my arm. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face etched with a pain I had never seen before. Sarah, I'm so sorry, he stammered. I had no idea. About the loan. About any of it. You knew she was taking money, Dad, I said, my voice flat, without accusation. It was just a statement of fact. You didn't know how bad it was, but you knew something was wrong, and you helped her hide it. He flinched, but he didn't deny it. He just nodded, a look of profound shame on his face. We will fix this, he said, his voice cracking. I promise you we will fix this. It's not about fixing it anymore, Dad, I said. It's about consequences. And with that, we left. The next few days were a blur of phone calls. My aunts and uncles called to offer their support, all of them horrified by what Chloe had done. The story was spreading through the extended family like wildfire, and for once, the narrative was not being controlled by Chloe. The truth was out, and it was firmly on my side. It was a strange, vindicating feeling. A week later, my parents asked me and Liam to come to their house. They wanted to talk. When we arrived, they were sitting in the living room looking exhausted. Chloe was not there. "We've spoken to Chloe," my father began, his voice heavy. "She's admitted to everything. The job, the money, the loan application. She's moving out of her apartment at the end of the month," my mother added, her voice quiet. "She can't afford it anymore. She's going to move into the guest room here for a while." I felt a flash of anger. So she gets to come home and be taken care of after everything she's done? "It's not like that," my father said quickly. "There are conditions, strict ones. First, she is going to pay back every single cent she took from the emergency fund. We've taken her name off the account and her credit cards. We've set up a payment plan. It will take her years, but she will pay it back. Second," my mother continued, "she is starting therapy. Immediately. We've already found someone for her. This isn't optional. And third," my father said, looking me directly in the eye, "we wanted to talk to you about the loan application. We understand that what she did was a crime. We will support whatever decision you and Liam make. If you want to press charges, we will stand by you." It was the first time in my life my parents had ever truly put me first, before Chloe. The offer was tempting. A part of me, the part that was still raw and hurting from the wedding, wanted to see her face a legal reckoning. But I looked at Liam, and he gave me a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. He would support me either way, but we both knew what a court case would do to our family. It would be a long, ugly, public affair that would drag everyone through the mud. "We're not going to press charges," I said, the decision solidifying as I spoke the words. "But we have conditions of our own." My parents looked at me, waiting. "I want her out of my life," I said. "Completely. I don't want to see her. I don't want to speak to her. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at my house. She is not to have any contact with me or Liam ever again. If she violates that, we will get a restraining order, and we will reconsider pressing charges." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "We understand," she whispered. "And I need an apology," I continued, turning to them. "Not from her. From you. I need you to apologize for all the years you enabled her. For all the times you told me to be the bigger person, to just let it go. For not protecting me. For letting it get this far." The tears spilled over and ran down my mother's cheeks. My father looked down at his hands. "You're right," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We failed you. We were so busy managing Chloe's issues that we took your strength for granted. We always knew you could handle it. And that wasn't fair. We are so, so sorry, Sarah. More than you will ever know. It wasn't a magic fix. It wouldn't erase years of hurt. But it was a start. It was an acknowledgement. And for now, it was enough." In the months that followed, a new kind of normal began to settle in. Life was quiet, peaceful. Holidays were smaller, attended by me and Liam or just my parents. Chloe was never there. My parents were making a genuine effort to rebuild their relationship with me. They were more present, more attentive. They asked about my life, my work, my marriage. They were learning to be parents to the daughter they had, not just the one who demanded all their attention. My cousin Sarah told me that Chloe had gotten a low-level job in retail and was sticking to her payment plan. She was going to therapy, but by all accounts was still blaming everyone but herself for her problems. She had lost most of her friends, who had been drawn to her glamorous lifestyle, not her actual personality. Her perfect world, built on lies, had been completely dismantled. One afternoon, about 6 months after the anniversary dinner, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to me in Chloe's familiar, loopy handwriting. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity and a small, foolish part of me that still hoped for a real apology got the better of me. I opened it. It was short. It read, "I hope you're happy. You ruined my life over a stupid joke at your wedding. You took everything from me. I will never forgive you." I read it once, then twice. There was no remorse, no accountability, no understanding of the magnitude of what she had done. Just blame. Just victimhood. In her mind, she was still the one who had been wronged. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt nothing. The last lingering emotional tie I had to her just evaporated in that moment. She was a stranger to me now, a ghost from a past life. I walked into the kitchen and dropped the letter into the trash can. Liam saw me and came over, wrapping his arms around me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. I finally understood what had happened. Chloe had brought Ethan to my wedding to show him and everyone else how far I had come. She meant it as an insult, a way of reminding me of a past I should be ashamed of. But in the end, she had succeeded in a way she never intended. She had shown me exactly how far I had come. I had come far enough to stop accepting her abuse. I had come far enough to demand respect from my family. I had come far enough to build a life for myself that was so full of love and happiness that her poison couldn't touch it anymore. She thought she was showing me my past, but all she did was show me how far she would fall. And I had learned, finally, to just let her.